from studio politics to creative differences, these actors were removed from the MCU. The Marvel Comics universe has exploded onto screens around the world. The opportunities to play superheroes have made many actors' careers. Sometimes, though, it just hasn't worked out. Creative differences have cut some actors out, leaving them shaking their heads, not least of whom is Edward Norton. In 2008, Norton became Bruce Banner. The world watched his on-screen portrayal of the Incredible Hulk, and the movie was a success. It made $265 million at the box office. Norton was happy, the studio was happy, he was ready to reprise his role. He'd be big, green, and angry once again in the Avengers movie that was to follow, right? Wrong. As it turns out, the only person happy was Ed Norton. The writers, director, and the producers all wanted Norton out. Apparently, creative differences were too much to deal with. Marvel fired him from the role and hired Mark Ruffalo to replace him. Like his former character, that must have made Ed very angry. Maybe not as angry as Terrence Howard, though. He got to put on some armor for 2008's Iron Man movie. Playing War Machine was a big deal, and the movie was a huge success. Well, that's an understatement. It became the most successful movie franchise in Hollywood history. So, Howard decided that it was a good idea to ask for a pay hike to return for Iron Man 2. That wasn't a great strategy. He was reportedly paid between $3.5 million and $4.5 million for the first film. That seems reasonable, but Robert Downey Jr., the star of the movie, Mr. Tony Stark himself, was only paid $2.5 million for his role. So maybe asking for a pay hike wasn't well thought out. Did I mention he wanted $8 million to return for the sequel? Well, he did. The studio offered him $1 million. He declined, and Don Cheadle became War Machine. Maybe Terrence overused his repulsor ray. Either way, his time was up. It catches up to everyone. Just ask Dominic Cooper. In 2011, he was on the big screen as Howard Stark in the first Captain America movie. But in Captain America Civil War, he was replaced by John Slattery. Why? It was simple. Maybe not for Cooper, but the role required an older Howard Stark, a role that Slattery had played before. Anti-aging technology hadn't been developed sufficiently, so age caught up with him. Well, his character's age did. Changing character timelines regularly involves pushing actors out the door. Damien Portier was another casualty. He played Thanos in the Avengers, but Josh Brolin was given the role for Infinity War. The recast had nothing to do with conflicts or the actors' schedules. It was a creative decision. That's gotta hurt. The Thanos story arc evolved and his physical appearance evolved, so Marvel had to make a switch. Damien Portier stayed in the universe for one more film, Captain America Civil War, where he played one of Crossbone's mercenaries. With the crazy advancements in CGI, fans could barely tell the difference, and Marvel made the transition pretty seamlessly. The differences between old Thanos and new Thanos were virtually undetectable. What was very visible? Cutting Andrew Garfield out as the Amazing Spider-Man and replacing him with Tom Holland. Why? There are a couple reasons. After playing Peter Parker in The Amazing Spider-Man and 2 years later in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, his performance left the studio very unhappy. But that wasn't all. The studio was also upset with his off-screen behavior as well. The release date for the third Amazing Spider-Man film was supposed to be announced at an executive event in Brazil. Garfield was to show up and make the announcement. Simple. But Andrew canceled the appearance, and the announcement wasn't made. Studio representatives were furious. The former Peter Parker tried to smooth it over. He told the bosses he was sick, and that's why he had to cancel. They weren't buying it, and he was replaced by Tom Holland. That is rough. Garfield admits it was rough. He told Amy Adams, "I signed up to serve the story, to serve this incredible character, and then it gets compromised and it breaks your heart. I got heartbroken a little bit." He can't cry over spilled milk. Some actors never got the chance to play a superhero role. Emily Blunt was the first choice to play Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow. But due to a commitment with Fox Studio, she had to appear in Gulliver's Travels and had to turn the role down. So Scarlett Johansson put the suit on, and the rest is history. Emily has no regrets. She feels like the conflict worked out for her. I don't think I would have been able to do a lot of projects that I've loved doing. You can't predict what's going to happen. So if I make the choice for myself, I think that's an exciting prospect. I'm sure Daniel Craig also thought it was an exciting prospect when he was approached to play Thor, the God of Thunder. But since he was already James freaking Bond, he had to turn down the offer. Sheesh. Some guys really do have all the luck. And some leading ladies also have the privilege of being very picky, like Jessica Chastain. She's been offered parts in Iron Man 3 and Doctor Strange, but she chose to hold out for a bigger role in the MCU. Wow, decisions. For Iron Man, she was almost cast as Maya Hansen, a scientist who has a relationship with Tony Stark. Nice. But she claimed other commitments kept her from taking on the role. A couple of years later, Chastain was asked to join Doctor Strange as the surgeon Christine Palmer, an ex and colleague of Stephen Strange. She turned it down, not because of commitment issues. Apparently, she decided she would only join the MCU as a superhero and completely refused the idea of playing a sidekick. It's nice to have options, right? Wow. Not everyone gets to pick and choose, and more often than not, you need all the luck to be on your side. And you have to jump at every opportunity that comes your way. Unless you're Matthew McConaughey. He was asked to play Ego, the villain of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but he passed to play in Stephen King's The Dark Tower. He said, "I like Guardians of the Galaxy, but The Dark Tower script was well written. I like the director and his take on it, and I could be the creator." I wonder if he regrets it. Couldn't blame him if he did. The role was happily filled by Kurt Russell. You know who wasn't happy with their MCU experience? Lindsay Lohan. In her docuseries Lindsay, Ms. Lohan said she wanted to play Maria Hill in The Avengers, but her manager couldn't get it for her. The studio cast Colby Smulders instead. It seems very odd to blame your manager. Marvel Studios likely wasn't interested in casting Lindsay anyway. She was known across the industry for being a nightmare to deal with. Someone who's seen as a pleasure to deal with is Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He was offered the role of Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's an obvious choice and would have been great. However, he turned Marvel down so he could do Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. Maybe it was a bad decision, but when you've just finished Inception, you can pick and choose. Like Matt Damon, when he turned down the offer to play Daredevil way back in the early 2000s. Damon considered it, but couldn't. He had no confidence in the director and no confidence in the script. So naturally, what did he do? He decided his friend, Ben Affleck, would be a good fit for the role and recommended him. I'm sure there's no love lost there. I'm not sure who Matt was trying to help out with that favor. Someone who knows all about favors is Jared Leto. He was scheduled to play Doctor Strange. Marvel's first choice for the role was Benedict Cumberbatch, but the filming dates weren't going to work for Cumberbatch, so Leto was in, right? No. Marvel executives really wanted Cumberbatch to play the role of Stephen Strange, so they changed filming dates to make it work, leaving Leto in the lurch. That's almost villainous. So, from studio politics to creative differences, these actors were removed from the MCU.